Boxing Truth here. I want to do a story about Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., boxing royalty Chavez Jr., who's had an interesting career. He hasn't had a great career, nowhere near the recognition that he of his father his father gotten. He was a legendary champion, multi divisional champion, pound for pound, all that stuff, and regarded as a hero in his country. No, Chavez Jr. is not his father, but given the talent and his upbringing, he has come a long way as a professional prize fighter. Just not nowhere near as good as dad, of course, but he has come a long way considering his upbringing and also his development process as a prize fighter. Anyways, Chavez Jr., his name still carries weight. He's on the verge of getting an undeserving title shot at super middleweight. And Badou Jack is the potential opponent. Badou Jack is WBC super middleweight champion. He's promoted by Mayweather Promotions. He's advised by Al Heyman. Chavez Jr. is advised by Al Heyman, so it's a particularly easy fight to make. Of course, Chavez Jr. doesn't deserve the fight. He hasn't even campaigned at 168 pounds at all in his career. Over the past almost 3 years now, he's been campaigning over 168 pounds. He fought once at 168, and that was against Brian Vera in the rematch. The last fight that he actually looked pretty good in, and actually looked in pretty decent shape. However, he was in there with an undersized guy. Brian Vera usually fights at middleweight, and he was outgunned in the rematch against Chavez Jr. He did win the first fight against Chavez Jr., who was out of shape, didn't even bother to train for that fight. He didn't get the decision, of course, because of politics. But Chavez Jr. did right that wrong in the second fight, came in better shape, and won the fight. And now he's on the verge of getting a title shot with Badou Jack. The working date is in April 16th, I believe, in Los Angeles, I believe. Yeah, tentative date in April 16th in Los Angeles. This was reported by Boxing Scene. And the thing is, Chavez Jr., he wants to become the first Mexican super middleweight champion ever. However, he might fall short on that quest because Gilberto Ramirez is scheduled to fight Offer Abraham on April 9th as a part of the Manny Pacquiao-Bradley undercard. And I believe Gilberto Ramirez will win that fight. He'll beat Offer Abraham, and he'll be the first Mexican super middleweight champion. And Chavez, the main concern about this fight is that can he even make super middleweight? That is the main concern. He's only made that weight limit once in his past 4 fights. He looked terrible in his last fight against Marcos Reyes. It was supposed to be like a tune-up for Chavez, but Marcos Reyes ended up giving him a tough fight. Chavez just looked terrible in the fight. He just didn't look good. Looked lethargic, slow. No head movement, no jab coming in. Just walked straight in like an idiot. No skill whatsoever when he's coming forward. You can come forward, but show some skill. Move your head, block, parry, feint, you sidestep, do something. Don't just walk straight in. and that's what he's been doing his last two fights. He's looked downright terrible. It's been laughable watching Chavez Jr. fight lately. And against Marcos Reyes believed he won the fight. I didn't sit down and score every round. I just watched the fight, and I was just disgusted and just shaking my head at Chavez Jr.'s performance. Just looked terrible in the fight, but I didn't really score it round by round. Some people thought Reyes won. Reyes felt, but he believed he won. I really don't know. I don't really have a strong opinion on it. Perhaps, there was some corruption going on in the fight. Maybe the punch stats were altered. Maybe the commentating of the Showtime was biased. That could definitely influence fans into thinking a certain guy won. It's been done before. I just advise, especially new boxing fans, to watch fight with your eyes. They'll be influenced by punch stats. Do not listen to biased commentating. Every network does it. No network is immune to that. HBO, PBC, whatever, Showtime. Every network does it for their home fighter or the guy they invested in. So you have to watch fights with your eyes. Just be aware. Don't be a sheep boxing fan. Anyways, Chavez Jr. I said before, he's come a long way. He has. I mean, considering when he first started as a pro, he had no amateur career. Absolutely none. He was a guy that just wanted to follow the footsteps of his father. He didn't really have the same upbringing of his dad. He was he didn't grow up poor or anything like that. No, I mean, his father was already wealthy and a world champion when Chavez Jr. was growing up. So he didn't have that same type of upbringing that his father had. Most fighters come from poor backgrounds, and it's true. That's where the hunger comes from. You come into boxing to make some dough. And Lou DiBella once said, if you're a rich kid, why the hell would you want to box? Why the hell would you even want to fight? It's true. I mean, why the hell would you want to fight if you have money already? That makes no sense. But Chavez Jr. went at it. He signed with the right promoter to complete this task. I mean, it was a lab project. It was a big project Top Rank had on their hands. However, Top Rank has proven to be the best at matchmaking. They know how to match their fighters against opponents that will make them look good. Not just win, but make them look good, make them look better than they really are. And that's exactly what they did with Chavez Jr., especially early on. They matched him. Since he had no amateur career, he had to learn on the trade. He had to learn on the job. So he fought a bunch of cab drivers from Mexico. Probably found some guys on the street, made up some fake records. Something Don King used to do back in the 80s. He used to find some guys out there, make up fake records and put it against his star fighters. Some promoters have done some crazy things in the sport of boxing. But Chavez Jr., he slowly built up his name and fan base. I mean, he had the name already, and he was just building his development. But it was a very slow process. I mean, Top Rank really took their time. They slowly upped his level of competition. But he was mostly fighting guys that he was a lot bigger than. He outsized pretty much all the guys that he fought. But by 2009, it seemed like they hit rock bottom. He was fighting in Vegas. I think it was the undercard of Pacquiao Cotto. He won a decision against Troy Rowland, but it was such a shitty performance. He looked terrible in the fight. Looked slow. It didn't look like there was any development going on. He ended up testing positive for a substance. I believe it was a diuretic to make weight or some shit like that. And that ended up being the turning point of Chavez's career. He ended up, getting more serious about his career. He hired Freddie Roach. He hired Alex Ariza as his strength coach, and all of a sudden, he became a different fighter. I mean, he became actually a real fighter. He drastically improved. He was in great shape all of a sudden. He was making weights dangerously, but he was in good shape. He had great stamina. He was throwing more punches. He looked like a real fighter against John Duddy. That was his best performance in that time. And then he kept surprising a lot of boxing experts and people that writ him off. And of course, he looked terrible in that Troy Rowland fight. No one expecting anything out of Chavez Jr. after that fight, after that terrible showcase in Vegas. But he got more serious about his career. Maybe Ariza helped him out a little bit. It definitely produced great results in the ring. He beat Sebastian Zibic for the world title, WBC title. Had some solid defenses against Manfredo Jr., Marco Rubio, beat him easily. And of course, he destroyed Andy Lee. That was an impressive performance at the time. I mean, Andy Lee is a legit contender in the middleweight division. He's not a great fighter, but he's a solid contender, world, top 10. And Chavez Jr. blew him out of there. And it just showed that, Chavez Jr. was dangerous. He was a big guy, and if he was motivated, and if he was in shape, he could really do some damage in the ring. I mean, he really was a threat because he was a big guy who could squeeze down 160 pounds somehow. And if he was in shape, he could really be a threat to you because he was hard to hurt at 160 because a lot of the guys that he fought he overpowered. He outsized them, and he couldn't. The guys were small. They couldn't keep him off of him. But against Maravilla, he blew it. He was nervous, concerned that he wasn't good enough to compete with Maravilla. Smoking weed and got high. Was training in his living room. That 24/7 was hilarious. I mean, he's in his boxers. I mean, he's in his underwear eating Cheerios or some shit. You could tell. You saw the signs of him, getting high during that 24/7 showing of Martinez and Chavez, and he ended up losing every round in that fight. And it didn't seem like he had the best training camp. I mean, he was training in his freaking living room, doing pads in his living room. It was a joke. I don't know what the hell was that. It was funny as hell, but he lost every minute of every round except the 12th. Almost got a dramatic knockout in the 12th. That ended up being Maravilla's last great fight, last great performance of his career. He was never the same after that fight. And then Chavez's career just went downhill ever since that loss. Was never able to regain that form that he had with Chavez and Ariza as his strength coach. Just wasn't coming in shape, was disrespecting the sport, coming way overweight, having last-minute stipulations on contracts in order to raise the weight level because he couldn't make the weight. His fan base started to drop because he just didn't show the professionalism of a fighter, coming in shape and trying to make weight. And then he quit against Fonfara, lost every minute of every round of that fight. And it kind of exposed the bad matchmaking of Al Heyman. Al Heyman, he hasn't really shown to be a good matchmaker. Maybe he needs to hire some new ones because he's caused some of his prospects some losses because of bad matchmaking. And this was a case of bad matchmaking. I mean, Top Rank throughout his whole career matched him with smaller guys that he could overpower. Even were able to get him a pay-per-view fight against Maravilla, and a legitimate puncher's chance to win because Maravilla was a much smaller guy compared to Chavez. But Heyman, in his first fight with Heyman, he matches him with Fonfara, a legit light heavyweight contender, in his first fight. And Chavez he didn't even fight any real 68-pound contenders. And now he's going to fight Fonfara, a legitimate 175 contender. He made him come to a catch weight, but at a 172 catch weight, I believe. Didn't bother Fonfara. He made the weight easily. Ended up beating the shit out of Chavez, outboxed him, made him quit, knocked him down. And then he came back against Reyes and looked terrible again. So, and the problem is he's not with Freddie Roach. He's not with the same strength coach or a coach that can get him back to that type of shape he was in. Now he's dealing with Robert Garcia, and I just don't see that as a good unionship. A lot of fighters in Robert's camp have struggled to make weight, other types of shit, in his camp. Doesn't seem like his fighters are the most disciplined, and it won't seem like Chavez Jr. can regain that form with Robert Garcia. I just don't see it. They had their tryout against Marcus Reyes, and I didn't see much improvement. So the same shit. Guy who was not in the best of shape, plodding forward and getting tagged. Just no defense. But I see the end of the road for Chavez Jr. in this fight against Badou Jack. I'm still skeptical as it will happen because I'm just concerned of Chavez Jr.'s weight. But I get why the fight's gonna happen. But I know why Badou Jack wants that fight. It's it's get a name on his resume. It's a good fight for him. Very winnable fight. I believe Badou Jack trashes Chavez Jr. I mean, Badou Jack is not a. He's improved. He's definitely improved ever since that knockout loss to Derek Edwards. He got caught. He got chin checked in the first round. Could happen to any fighter. He's definitely improved since that fight. He looked pretty strong against Anthony Durrell. I was surprised of his conditioning in that fight. Of course, some fans will argue that maybe the memo shakes are having an effect on Badou Jack. Possible, I'm not really sure. I mean, he is with Memo. I'm not really. I'm not a big fan of Memo because of his past, and he still seems to be a shady character in boxing. It's just he's not the most trustworthy guy to have in your camp because of his history and his knowledge of PEDs and drug testing in general. But Badou Jack, right now, he's the more serious fighter. He's the more professional fighter. He can make 68 with no problem. There's always question marks about Chavez Jr.'s commitment to the sport, his laziness. He does have talent. I mean, I was surprised as anybody that he was able to win a world title, that he was able to turn his career around following that Troy Rowland fight in Vegas. I mean, he was actually a real fighter for it at one point. He had that run at middleweight from 2010 to 2012. It was his best 2-year period of his career, and now he's going through a really bad spell of not making weight and shitting on his fans for not making weight, and that performance against Maravilla, training in his living room, testing positive for marijuana. Just all types of shit that has plummeted his stock value, but he's still a name in the sport, but that's not a good fight for Chavez Jr. Badou Jack, I think Badou Jack trashes him right now, especially after his last performance. He's not even sure if he can make super middleweight. Seeing some pictures not too long ago of how of him looking pretty much very heavy, almost looked like he's fighting at heavyweight. Looked over 200 pounds in one pick, but anyways, y'all let me know what y'all think about this matchup. Do you think Chavez Jr. can has another good performance in his career? Can he upset Badou Jack? This is Boxing Truth. I'm out.